Imposter syndrome. We all struggle from it. Some of us to bigger degrees than others. Do I belong? Will people find out I'm a phony? Have I been faking it all this time and I still haven't made it, but people haven't figured it out? Today, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and how we can change our mindset to overcome it. Welcome to episode 21 of the Key Hire Small Business Podcast, where we cover the issues that help business owners scale their small business. I'm Corey Harlock, creator of Key Hire, where we help small business owners scale with our talent, and I'll be your host. Our guest today is Kevin Palmeri. He's recorded over 2,300 podcast episodes as a host and as a guest, but his podcast is called Next Level University, where they talk about how to level up life, love, health, and will. He's a big martial arts fan. He'll be watching UFC this weekend, he says, and apparently he's a bourbon fan too, because he said he'll be doing it with a glass of bourbon. And he's the ultimate cat dad. I'm a dog guy. He's a cat guy. I smell a problem. But anyway, let's bring Kevin on and get into this.
What's happening, my friend?
It's going good. It's going really good. How about you?
I'm living the dream. I love dogs. I love cats, so we can be together as one.
Cool. But tell me a bit about Next Level University and kind of how you ended up there.
I was somebody who's not supposed to be successful. For most of my life, I was not very successful at all. Ended up getting a job in a very good industry called weatherization, and I made a bunch of money, thinking that money was going to buy happiness and fulfillment. It didn't. I ended up on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide a couple of years later. And then I was interviewed on a podcast, and I fell in love with podcasting. And I said, if I could do this for a living, if I could do this for the rest of my life, I would be the happiest, most fulfilled person on the planet. I started a podcast in 2017, and then I went all in 2018. And our goal is to help people level up their life, their love, their health, and their wealth. That's what we do in a nutshell.
Wealth. I said wealth.
No worries.
I thought I heard what you thought you said. So I think I heard what you thought you said.
It's all good.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, the podcasting deal, it is one of the highlights of my day when I get to chat with people, because it's cool. It's fun talking to cool people with cool experiences, right? Mm. So this is always, Matt and I always get a kick out of doing these and kind of going over them at the end and reviewing and talking about, do you remember that podcast? So it was all kinds of fun. But today, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, and full disclosure. I don't think I was supposed to be a successful person either. My background, if people had have looked at where I came from, all the money probably would have been poverty and or prison and or addiction. Mm-hmm. But overcoming the odds is something you do. But I think we all do in our own regard, right? Everyone's perception is their reality. And I think we all deal with, at times, do I belong here? Are people going to find out? Am I a phony? And that's, man, that can chew you up. It can eat you up a bit inside. So kind of, as we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, but what is it? Like, for people out there who might not be diagnosed, right? Or I use that as a quote unquote air quotes, but what is it? What's imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I would say imposter syndrome is your belief is that you are far less capable than you actually are in reality. And oftentimes that holds you back from taking shots that you're ready to take, getting opportunities that you're ready for, and ultimately gaining a new level of success that you actually are competent enough to get to. It becomes this thing where, to your point, whether you are or you're not, if you believe it, you are. And if you don't think you're good enough, you're not going to take the actions to prove that wrong, and you're going to get stuck in this cycle, and you're going to end up less than you could have in some way, shape, or form.
Now, can it also, does it apply to all aspects of your life? I mean, I know like some things I'm pretty confident I'm good in, and some things I feel like I'm going in thinking, I'm in deep water here, right? It's only a matter of time. So is it in all aspects of your life? Is it in specific aspects of your life? How does it manifest?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the person. What I've experienced the most in terms of just talking to people is when they start a new endeavor. Usually it's in the business realm. It's, well, who am I to charge for blank? Who am I to talk to someone about blank? I don't have any credentials. Why
Right.
do I get to make money off of that? So I've seen it very, very often, specifically in the professional realm, because we understand the importance of feeling like we belong in a job or in a leadership position or with a new product or service. So I would say it can be anywhere, but it really shows up in the opportune times, especially in professionalism.
Right. I think socially it shows up a bit too. My
Yeah.
experience has always been kind of socially, right? When you're around people and you're thinking, do I really fit in here?
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, most people really don't care. If you're good people and you have good ideas and you're engaging and you're curious and kind, they really don't give a shit where you come from for the most part.
I'm lucky because I have been on the receiving end of that in the most positive light. And even, I told you this, even in the beginning of this, I had a moment before getting on here that I had some imposter syndrome. Who am I to talk to small business owners? Yes, I am one, but I don't classify myself as a business coach or
Right.
that type of thing. So it's one of those things where I don't know, and we'll talk about this, I don't know if it ever goes away. I think it's something that you learn to coexist with as you grow.
Yeah, we'll get into the tips in a bit. Right now we're kind of talking about the pitfalls of it all, right? But
Yeah.
and we had, I often, and I think I've done this. No, I haven't. I don't think I've done it. I have done it sometimes. If we have there was an episode way back, we were talking about selling and how to get in with a small kind of offer where it's impossible for people to say no, and then you give them the big offer,
Yep.
right? But getting that small offer is the easy win. And there's no money there, but people say yes. And so the danger is getting addicted to this is where I want to live because people are accepting and buying it, and never having the courage to kind of get outside yourself or having that mindset to say, hey, I got this bigger offer and it's good value, and kind of shrinking away, saying, well, maybe it's too much, or maybe I can't deliver as what I think I do, or whatever it is, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's some traps along the way where we can do what's easy instead of doing what's right.
Well, I think it's unfortunately one of those things that we think eventually will go away when.
Okay, that's great. Yeah,
Right? Like when I sell this, I'll be able to do the next thing. And it's not always that case. Sometimes we do. We take the path of least resistance, which also leads to the path of least growth,
right.
Unfortunately.
Sometimes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate it's set up that way, but yeah, it is definitely a trap. It is definitely a trap, and then you start to believe the lies that you're telling yourself, and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. And it really is, it's a conversation of professional development and self-development. There's a lot of places you can go to talk about how to sell better. Here's 5 steps, do this, do this, do this. But if you don't think you're deserving,
Right.
that's where there's another trap in that as well. So professional and personal development kind of crossing.
Yeah, and I guess there's associations too. I mean, I always fought the battle of I hate selling because I feel like a used car salesman or something, right? And
Yep.
But the reality is, we're just out there trying to help people, and we see a way we can help them, and we want to do good for them. And then you have that conflict that lives inside you, like, I can really help them. I know I can, and I want to, but I don't want to. I don't want to have an awkward interaction where someone might say no, and then logically, if they say no, you're still at the exact same spot where you started, because you didn't have their business when you started, and when they say no, you still don't have their business. You haven't gone backwards, you just haven't moved forward.
Yeah. I saw a stat one time that really helped me with that. It was something along the lines of 25% of people are ready to buy now, 25% will be ready to buy eventually, 25% will be ready to buy if, and 25% will just never be ready to buy. And it was like, all right, so I'm already doing better than I expected if I'm at 75%. That's a win. That was helpful for me.
And I remember way back when I was like, I forget what I was listening to, but the guy said in sales, I every day I pick up the phone and I challenge myself to get 10 no's. He said, and I've never got, and I will stop when I get a yes, right? I got to get 10 no's in a row. He said, and funny enough, I've never met my goal.
Interesting.
because someone has always said yes before I got to the 10th no, right? So basically saying, if you knock on enough doors, someone eventually is going to say yes, but it's hard.
I
So,
wonder
go ahead. Sorry, man.
no, you're good. I was just going to say, I wonder if that person has ever dealt with imposter syndrome, because that's almost like the hyper belief.
Yeah,
So that makes it challenging too. Is there's some people who are talking about imposter syndrome who probably have actually never dealt with it. They just don't know it, and they're not exactly sure how to overcome it because they've never had to, because they've just had hyper belief.
Yeah, that's true, right? It's just kind of that blind faith in yourself,
Yeah.
which is amazing. So let's kind of get into businesses. Talk about. I'm trying to think how to phrase this, because we always want to talk about the pitfalls of it, right? And maybe that's how we'll phrase it today. Not the mistakes, but the pitfalls, or failure to recognize, or the traps a business owner can fall into when it comes to imposter syndrome, or that lack of belief, or that head trash that kind of holds you back.
Yeah, usually the pitfall that happens the most is you don't believe in yourself a ton. You get a result with a client or with an opportunity that you don't know how you got, and there's a piece of you that doesn't believe you actually should have gotten it. And then that client or opportunity says, I actually want you to do more at a bigger scale. And then immediately it's I don't believe I'm doing well at this. There's no possibility I could do what you're asking me. And then we say no to that opportunity, and then we lose the whole opportunity. And it becomes this perpetual cycle of that.
So what I think I heard was you saying the external view is you're doing amazing work, exactly what I want, and I want more. And the internal view is, man, I'm not doing a very good job.
100%. And what can also happen is somebody can try to give you a very small piece of feedback. Just, I really love what you're doing, but if you could shift this, and immediately you don't even hear the first part, and all you hear is this person is going to leave me because I'm not doing a good enough job and I don't know what I'm doing. You almost are deaf to the positivity, unfortunately.
Really?
At times it can get that way, yeah. When there are times, again, I deal with this. I've dealt with this. I've worked with this. I have had times where I am in an opportunity where I don't believe I should be. And then the person is a really good example. I'm going to a mastermind in a couple weeks with someone who is very, very, very big on YouTube and very famous in my space. I had to convince myself to do it. I had to sit with myself and say, if you don't do this, you are going to regret it tremendously. So it's if you have imposter syndrome and you do what's natural to you, you're probably going to say no to a lot of opportunities that would have opened you up to far more opportunities.
Right. And just to kind of put an emphasis on that point, I'm a Vistage member, and we have a great group. And one of the questions our chair asked us the other month was, if you could go back and make one change in your life, what would you undo or change? And look, I've done a lot of shitty and stupid things in my life, but my answer was I wouldn't change a thing, because growing up where I came from, I didn't understand the life I live now. I didn't understand it was an option. Not only did I not know it was an option, I didn't know it existed. So I've kind of bust through that kind of ceiling it's not even a ceiling. It was just lack of knowledge. I didn't have anyone to tell me those dinner table conversations like, hey, there's a whole other world out there. And, here we are as our family, and we're very successful. And I said, I'm a big believer in the butterfly effect. And if I had changed one thing in my past, I might not be here today. And the probabilities of my life being worse are much greater than the probabilities of my life being better, right? Because my life's pretty darn good. I get to talk to cool people like you, and got a great wife and a great family. So, but because of that, right, that's kind of, you're late to the party. There's people that grew up in these different circumstances. Now you're entering those worlds. And for me, that's where that imposter syndrome really shows up, because I'm like, ooh, I don't have the tenure or the pedigree or the whatever you want to call it that a lot of these people I work with do.
Well, it can also show up as a fear of success.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right? Because if you're afraid of getting more opportunity, you're going to be afraid of success. I thought it was always fear of failure. I thought that was the problem for everyone. Everybody was afraid of failure. And then when I started meeting certain people, they were afraid of success for different reasons, not just that. But yeah, if there is a piece of you that does not think you are deserving or capable, you're going to avoid it. It's just human nature to avoid the things that we're scared of or uncomfortable in. So it makes total sense.
And do you think there's an element of, I don't, we'll use a lateral scale instead of a vertical scale, but I don't belong here. I belong here. So the actions I do will limit me from moving into this other area because I need to stay where I belong or where I'm comfortable or where I'm safe.
Yes, and I think a lot of it has to do with the level of self-belief someone has, and not just that, the level of self-worth that they have. The level of self-worth, the reason I say that is because I've met some people who, for lack of better phrasing, are entitled.
Mm-hmm.
They probably should have imposter syndrome because they're not nearly as good as they think. But it doesn't matter because they take shots that they wouldn't if they didn't have that delusional belief. Right. And they get results that they wouldn't have had. So yeah, I think it's a conversation of usually the person has less belief than they should based on their competence, and they value themselves from a self-worth place much less than they actually should, and that facilitates lack of action, lack of direction, and lack of consistency.
Cool. So I want to kind of draw a parallel here. I have this theory called addicted to chaos. And, small business owners, and I talk about this all the time, the right way and the most common, not the right way, but the most common way to start a small business is have an idea. I'm going to hire a relative. I'm going to hire my neighbor needs a job. I'll hire him. My neighbor has a friend who seems like he's a good person. So we'll hire them too. And then we get going, right? And if we work hard enough and are smart enough and aligned enough, eventually that business will outgrow that kind of ad hoc structure we threw together to get it moving, right? And it's at that point where you kind of start thinking, okay, I've become overwhelmed or unsure about why my business isn't working the way it was, right? Because the business has outgrown the experience, the capacity, the structure that you have been working with. And so there's an overwhelm or an unsureness to that. And then, but the resistance to change is I'm addicted to the craziness that has resulted from this. And if I make it too easy, if I make the changes to make my business run smoothly and produce our product or service or sell it too easily, I'm diminishing the value of my business or my product or service or whatever that might be, right? When people don't pay for the pain you feel to produce that service or item, they pay for the quality and the on-time delivery and the reputation of the product, right? And so I'm wondering if there's not a piece of what we're talking about that is in that kind of head trash or addiction or routine of a business owner when it comes to looking at kind of breaking what they've built because it's not working anymore, and putting better systems and processes and ideas and hiring people with bigger capacity and experience in place.
Even the hiring and searching for mentors and searching for coaches and people ahead of you can be really hard when you have imposter syndrome because your biggest fear is being found out. What if when I start talking to Corey, he gets under the hood and he realizes I have no clue what I'm doing and we don't have SOPs and we've kind of just got here by word of mouth and really good customer service. So that's another way is you could be given 10 opportunities. Okay, we're going to connect you with this mentor. We have great lead gen for you. Here you go. Boom, 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 boom. And you'll find a way to say, honestly, I don't think that's right because if that all happens, I am going to get found out. I'm going to be disappointing people constantly. And those are my biggest fears. So yeah, 100%.
Is there the other side of that? If we do that, and it wasn't my idea, now I'm going to be diminished as in the eyes of my employees as a leader because why didn't you come up with those ideas?
100%. One of the hardest things of this journey for me is I work with a computer science engineer, and he's a genius. He's so incredibly intelligent. For a long time, I was afraid if people found out that I didn't build this myself, they would look down on me. So I had that. We've interviewed some geniuses, and I had imposter syndrome the whole time because I said, I'm not like these people.
Right.
They know it. So the best thing to do, I think, is to lean into authenticity, because to your point at the open, when you're spending time with people, if you're you and they like you, that's it. That's where it starts anyway. You can have a lot of stuff that builds from that. It starts with authenticity, I think. That's the hardest thing in the world to be.
It is being, and I think authentic has a few different shades of the same color, depending on the situation you're in, right?
Yeah.
But I believe it's a spectrum or a continuum of who you are. You can't, if this is going to sound really hokey, but if you got a blue hat and in different situations that shade of blue changes, then you can't go put on a red hat and be someone else.
Yes.
I think you're setting yourself up for, well, I always say whenever I try to, like, I'm just a real direct communicator. And I always tell people, look, I'm going to be a really direct communicator with you, because when I try to sugarcoat things and be flowery, I just end up insulting everyone. And so it's just easier for me to be direct. If you're going to be insulted, you're going to be insulted. But at least I was kind of doing it the way I know how to do, right?
Yeah.
It's something I had to learn, because some people don't enjoy direct feedback or direct communication, and that's cool, right? We all like what we like, and you just kind of. And I'm not saying you don't have to learn how to communicate with other people, but if I know how I communicate and you know how you communicate, we can have a conversation and probably come to a common ground where we're like, okay, here's how we can make this work.
Yeah. The fact that you said all that, it makes sense that you would have imposter syndrome, for lack of better phrasing, in maybe social versus professional. Because I think
that's true.
Yeah. You come off as somebody who's very confident, but oftentimes confidence creates conflict in relational situations, because not everybody's going to be as confident as you are, and there can be that social pressure there too. So I think it does happen on both ends.
Yeah, and the other side of that is, there's the expression, carry a clipboard and walk with confidence, and people will think you're important. And so when I work with people, like I'm working with some web developers and stuff right now, and even Matt, who he's my guy behind the scenes, my genius behind the scenes, right? But I'll always say, like, look, I'm going to give you ideas, and it's going to sound like I'm telling you what I want, because that's how I communicate.
Yeah.
I'm not. If it's a bad idea, you have my permission to say, yeah, that's a bad idea, Corey. And I'll be like, oh, okay, good. I was just kind of spitballing here. But the way I deliver stuff, people assume I'm like, no, this is what I want. Do it like this. I'm like, it gets me into trouble.
Well, that's just another reason why self-awareness is so important in business, because if you don't know who you are and the way you operate, it's really hard to lead effectively. It's just self-awareness is one of the most important things in the world in any realm. I'm convinced of it. It's one of the most important things.
Cool. Okay. So I think we've kind of talked a lot about different scenarios and what it feels like and looks like. So if there's anyone out there thinking, man, some of the stuff, these guys have talked about 100 things, but some of them resonated with me. What steps, other than calling you and saying, Kevin, I need to pick your brain. What steps, or what could people start doing out there to kind of maybe recognize or kind of say, hey, maybe this is, I've always kind of battled this. I couldn't really put a label on it, or, I think that's me, and I want to do better, right? I want to be better. I want to be a better business owner. I want to be a better spouse. I want to be a better parent. What are some of the steps we can take to get on the right path?
Yeah, so to your point, number one is identifying it. So next time you have an opportunity that you want to say no to and you don't know why, I would sit with that and say, well, is it because I don't think I'm good enough? I don't think I'm deserving? This tends to happen with people who are super heart-driven that don't feel like they deserve an outcome.
Okay, hold on. Define heart driven. I like that term. I don't know what it means.
I would say people who really, really, really want to help others to the detriment of themselves.
Okay.
From what I've seen. So that's the first step is, okay, let's identify what is this and how is it showing up and why do I not want to take on this opportunity? Is it because it's misaligned or because I don't think I can do it? Okay. Right. That's step one.
And those are two things. If it's not your core business, it's not in 100%. Your lane, that's okay.
Yep.
If you've made that analysis. But if you're like, it all lines up, it could be a good thing, but I don't want to do it. I don't know why, or I'm afraid, or I start making excuses and I don't know why, things like that.
Yes, especially if it's like a dream opportunity and you're starting to doubt. It's like, I don't know if I really want this anymore. Do you not want it or are you just afraid you can't do it?
Okay.
I've experienced that second one a lot. So that's point one. This is what's always worked really, really well for me. I try to look at the most recent and relevant proof. So as an example, I was on a podcast recently. This person is a doctor for NASA. They are a space doctor. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that was stuff from movies.
Right.
Why am I on this podcast? Right. I have no clue. Well, I had that feeling a couple of weeks prior with a different podcast. So I said, okay, what is the most recent time-stamped proof proving against what I think? Okay, that. And what's relevant about it? Well, I felt the same way. And when I did it, it went better than I expected. So what are the odds that I'm just telling myself a story and this might actually go better than I expected? That is something, Corey, I use that every single day. Every day I say, what is the most recent and relevant proof based on how I feel right now? And that has been an absolute game changer for me.
That's cool because I think, when you made the distinction that you think I probably suffer more from imposter syndrome socially than professionally. And I agree with that because professionally I have statistics, right. I keep statistics of the way Keyhire performs with its clients and they're very strong and very, they look really good against anyone who works in the realm we do. We don't have any direct competitors, but people that a business owner might think would be a competitor, our stats blow them out of the water. Mm-hmm. And I've had people say like, how can you be so sure about what you're saying? I'm like, because I have the data, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is what it is, unless we start doing things very differently and those stats start declining. But we found a process and a procedure that works and we stick with it. And if people ask us to go away from it, we say no, because we know if we do it our way, there's a probability of success is very high.
Yeah.
So that gives me the confidence in that world to say, well, here it is. So I think that's kind of aligned with what you're saying, where you're like, look at your last data point, right?
Yeah. The other really challenging thing is I think one of the biggest misconceptions is people think imposter syndrome is bad. I don't think it's bad. I think imposter syndrome is a representation of the growth between where you currently are and where you're trying to get to. I hope it never goes away, because if it goes away, that probably means I'm not growing anymore. So even that simple understanding of, oh, you have imposter syndrome, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It probably doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It probably means you're doing some things right. You just don't feel like you're capable of following up yet.
So that's an interesting point. It's almost like a signal saying you're somewhere that you should be or you've wanted to be, mm-hmm. but you're hanging on to where you were maybe, right? Okay. That's cool.
Your confidence hasn't caught up yet.
Interesting.
It just hasn't caught up. People, I don't know if anybody is truly accurate with their level of self-belief. I think everybody is over or under. And if you're under, you're probably going to experience imposter syndrome in the professional realm. If you're over, you're probably going to experience it in the personal realm. And again, a vast justification, blanket statement. But
it's like the survey they did of drivers, and 70% of people believe they're above average drivers.
Right. Yeah. Not possible.
Yeah. 20% of those people are just delusional.
100%.
Cool. Okay. What other advice do you have for us?
I would say that you have to check in with how important the opportunities are for you. Having a real conversation about the regret that you might feel if you don't follow through with the thing that you said you wanted so badly. Give yourself a little preview of what the pain might look like. I know we don't like to do that, but I think it's very important because it would be very easy to say, you know what? I'm not right for this. I can't do it, and then sweep it under the rug. You're probably going to regret that in the future. To your point about the butterfly effect, you're most likely going to regret that because you're going to say, this is what's going to happen. You'll get smaller opportunities, and eventually you'll get to the place where you say, you know what? Based on where I am today, I probably could have done that. There's no reason you couldn't have done it back then and got to where you are today. So that's another big one, is just give yourself a little preview of the pain. And then the last thing is just to further emphasize what we were talking about before. Is this something that I actually want and am afraid of, or is this just not important to me anymore? Does it align with my core values? Does it align with my core beliefs? Does it align with my core aspirations? If those are in misalignment, you can say no, and it's not because of imposter syndrome. But if you say, this is the ideal opportunity I've been working my whole life for, and this would transform my business and my family and my team and my future, but I'm not going to do it, it's a little bit of a different conversation.
And that it also aligns with what a lot of the experts these days are saying, like for growth, right? Like do things that scare you, do hard things. That's how you stretch yourself and grow and stay alive and stay sharp and stay motivated and all that good stuff.
Yeah, there's something about when if you're a speaker and you step on stage, there's a moment where there's no more present feeling than knowing this could go off the rails horribly. Or somebody in sports or somebody in sales, whatever it is, there's something about living on the edge of your capabilities that makes you feel alive. And it's an important drug to test every once in a while.
That's cool, man. Hey, this has been great. I've enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise.
It's been, I hope other people have gotten value out of it. I personally got value. So selfishly, it's been amazing. So Kevin, if people do want to reach out to you and they want to learn more about you and they want to plug into your podcast, I hope, Matt, I might be throwing you a curveball, but if they want to learn more about you or speak with you, how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, the podcast is Next Level University. That's the name of it. And you can reach out to me at Never Quit Kid on Instagram, or my email is kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. Any of those is good.
Watch. Let's see how fast Matt is here.
I know I threw Matt a curveball with that last one.
nextleveluniverse.com. Here it comes. He's typing away. There it is.
Nice.
All right. Awesome, man. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you take some time with us. I got value. I hope other people get value. I love conversations like this because they're honest, they're real. And, I hope if one person is like, man, I identify with this and I need to maybe take some steps to get out of my comfort zone, and it helps them grow their business or helps them grow personally, professionally, whatever it is, then that would be great.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate all the kind words, and I appreciate your time as well.
Anytime, man. Let's keep in touch.
Of course.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. All right. There you go. Kevin Palmeri, that was a great conversation, and definitely check out his podcast, Next Level Universe. It's awesome. And I'm going to be listening to more of it myself. But I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to the Keyhire Small Business Podcast. If you got value out of today's episode and want to keep up to date on our latest content, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can find us on Apple, Spotify. We're number 85 on Spotify for management and entrepreneurship right now, or wherever your favorite platform is by searching up the Keyhire Small Business Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about working with Keyhire and how we can help your small business, you can schedule a meeting with us on our website. We're a help-first organization, so I promise no sales, no weirdness, just help. Thanks for listening. I'm Corey Harlock. Until next time, stop grinding, start growing.